What is up, bros and broettes? I'm Inkslasher, and today we're going to be talking about a massive weapons buff that came to Infinite Warfare that no one's really talking about because it came out with the new DLC, and it only happened to one weapon, but boy, did this weapon ever get buffed to a massive extent. To the extent where I might as well say this may be the biggest buff to a weapon that has ever happened in a Call of Duty game. Now, of course, there's been some big ones, and we've seen them even in Black Ops 3. We've seen some pretty big weapon buffs, but this one, in my opinion, took a weapon that was complete crap and made it one of the better SMGs in the game. And of course, as you can tell by the gameplay, that is the VPR. So this weapon has been massively buffed since we last talked about it in a Versus episode, but also, I think to fully understand this buff, you actually have to understand how the weapon itself works. So basically, on this weapon, there are two barrels. Every time you pull the trigger at the exact same time, two bullets come out of the weapon at the exact same time. So every time one bullet comes out, it's not one bullet, it is actually two bullets. So let's say one bullet does 15 damage. However, every time you pull the trigger, two of those bullets are coming out, so you're not dealing 15 damage, you're dealing 30, assuming both bullets actually hit. That's why you see the really weird hip spread. Each of those little semicircles is actually where one of those bullets is supposed to go. Alright, so now that you understand how this weapon basically worked, now we can talk about how it was buffed and why those individual things were buffed in itself. So before this weapon was buffed, I had two major gripes with it, and the first one was that there was a ton of recoil, way too much recoil, and the second problem I had is the range on this weapon was far too short. It was just so short it wasn't competing with the other SMGs as far as the damage profile went because the damage dropped off so quickly. So the first thing that was actually changed was the recoil. So the way they explained it is they said recoil and gun kick provide a little more consistency. That is a massive understatement. So basically what was going on before is that this weapon had ridiculous recoil, and not in the sense that it would shoot right up to the ceiling, in the sense that it would bounce left to right, and really no weapons in Call of Duty game actually have that sort of recoil. Well, that recoil is still there, but it's much less. So basically what was happening before is, as I mentioned, this weapon fires two bullets at a time. I believe what they forgot to account for in the coding is that every time one bullet would come out, it would have the amount of recoil for two bullets, because the video game code would compensate for two bullets coming out of the gun and not just one. And because of that, the recoil felt like way more than it actually should be. And now that this patch is actually out, they way understated the amount of recoil they actually got rid of. There is little to no recoil on this weapon. Even at long range, I found it easy to pick people off. So recoil is much better. The next thing they said is they made damage adjustments, and they didn't give any specific numbers, so unfortunately I can't tell you what the exact damage buff actually is, but I can tell you just by playing with the weapon, they increase the damage, and pretty drastically too. It seems like the weapon is pretty much one bullet less to kill at almost every single range. It's much more melty than it was at a prior time, and I think the problem that they had with this before the buff is that they were counting that every two bullets were going to hit. They just assumed that if you're firing two bullets at the exact same time, both of them were going to hit, and I don't think that was necessarily the case. But since they did this, this weapon is a shred machine up close, because most of the time up close now, you are going to be able to hit both of the bullets that actually come out of this weapon. And because of that, when both bullets hit, it's a very powerful weapon. When one of the two bullets misses that comes out of the weapon, all of a sudden, this weapon really loses its luster. Even still, I wouldn't say since this buff, this weapon is a god gun. It's a better weapon, but by no means is it the best weapon in the game. And believe it or not, we're not done yet. There's still 3 more buffs added to this weapon. So the next one is fixed a bug that would double up on hit markers. I don't know what that means. I never had that glitch happen to me, but apparently they fixed it. The next one is increased clip and stock size. So before the clip size was 40 and now it is 60. The interesting thing about this is really the magazine size was 80 because you had 2 of them, and now it's 120, which is absolutely insane, because you got to remember there's 2 of those magazines going into the weapon. So now you start out with 120 bullets in your weapon that deal low damage, but if you hit both, they deal high damage, is the basic way of looking at it. And finally, decrease the reload time. So yes, as of last time we talked about this weapon, the VPR actually had the worst reload time out of any of the SMGs. I believe it is now tied with the Karma. I could be wrong about that though. I'm just doing that off of memory. So all in all, there's less recoil, higher damage, bigger clip, and faster reload speed. This is by far the most I've ever seen one weapon buffed in a game. Like, almost every single stat on this weapon actually got better, and that is absolutely insane. And let me tell you, before they did this buff, this weapon was next to useless. It was by far, in my opinion, the worst weapon in the game. Literally the worst. And now it can actually compete with some of the better SMGs, which is pretty impressive. I still do think the weapons like the K-Bar, the Xeon, or the Osa are all better than it. However, this weapon can actually compete with the other SMGs in the game now, especially on maps that have really tight corridors and close engagements. For example, the gameplay you're watching here on Frontier, this is an absolute perfect map for this weapon. And let me tell you, on a map like this, if you're hitting both of those bullets that come out of the weapon, you will absolutely melt people. So on maps like this, the ones with the close engagements, this is definitely a weapon you're going to want to be using. And like I said, this weapon is no longer a piece of crap. In fact, it's pretty damn good now. So before this video is over, I wanted to just real quickly talk about weapon balance, specifically in Infinite Warfare. So when I was actually down at Infinity Ward, I got to speak to some of the multiplayer developers, and one of the things we talked about was how they balance weapons and what they look at when balancing weapons. And they told us the main things they actually look at is the stats, the overarching stats with certain weapons. And one of the main stats they look at is the overarching kill death with an individual weapon. But they said that sometimes this actually causes problems. Like, for example, the NV4 is a weapon that everyone uses, good players and bad players. Since both people actually use it, the overall KD with that weapon is going to average out to around 1. However, a weapon that less players use and takes more skill to use, something like the RPR Evo, the overall kill death is going to be better with that, because generally speaking, better players actually use that weapon. So this is where things get a little bit iffy. Technically, when you think about it, the weapon that is the best weapon in the game should also have the top overarching kill death ratio. But you have to remember, a weapon that's actually the best weapon in the game, also bad people are going to use and lower that overarching kill death ratio. For example, in Black Ops 3, I believe my top kill death ratioed weapon is the Dingo. And the reason why is because I used it so little and it's a decent weapon. Do I think it's the best weapon in the game? Absolutely not. Do I think I should have the best kill death ratio with it? Absolutely not. The only reason why I do is because I've used it so little, and when I have, I've done well with it. So the thing they kind of alluded to with the VPR, and the reason why I think they buffed it, is the actual total amount of kills that people had with the VPR versus the total amount of kills people had with the Xeon. Because the Xeon is a very good weapon, and when the VPR first came out, it was a very bad weapon. So obviously people are going to get many more kills with the Xeon than they are with the VPR. And as you can see, because of it, the VPR got quite a substantial patch and is actually now a pretty competitive weapon, which is definitely a good thing to see. But guys, that's pretty much all I have to say today about the VPR. It's definitely a better weapon, and let me know what you think. Have you used it yet since it's been buffed, or did you even know it got buffed? Let me know down in the comment section below. Also, if you're new to the channel, I upload new Call of Duty videos every single day of the week, so if that's something you're interested in, that subscribe button is sitting there with your name on it. Also, if you enjoyed the video, it would be awesome if you could hit that like button. But guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace out.